Okay, so just before we start anything, I'm going to mention a few other things that I didn't mention in the first part of the tutorial. We have this file here called timestamp.php, which I didn't show you in the first part. And essentially what this file is going to do is give me quick access to the current Unix timestamp. And the reason for this is because during the tutorial I'm going to be demonstrating the expiry of adverts. Remember, we have a timestamp when they expire, and I'm going to need to keep track of the current Unix timestamp in order to manipulate this and add a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds on. So I'm just going to create some PHP tags, and I'm simply going to echo out time. And what this is going to do, it's just going to return a timestamp. So if we save this file and go ahead to our browser, you can see that the timestamp here is just simply displayed. So we're going to be copying this and pasting it into our expires field in our database, and then just manipulating it. Otherwise, if you were to insert the current timestamp, then by that time it would have expired. And if you're unfamiliar with timestamps, go ahead and read up on them, just in case you are a bit hazy on that one. Okay, so we've done with timestamp.php. We can close this. Let's take a look at the directory structure of the system. Now, as mentioned, I have these files here. Timestamp.php we can ignore, but we've got index.php, which is essentially the plain website that we're going to be adding the banner to up here, and we're going to be doing that by means of including our db.inc.php file. We've got go.php, which is in the root directory of wherever you're storing this, and that's obviously in the root directory because we're going to be creating a hyperlink and we don't want to be cutting into folders. We have another folder called banners, and the banners folder simply contains a list of our or a collection of the adverts that we want to display. I've put this in a subfolder just to keep everything tidy. The adverts folder has ads.inc.php, db.inc.php, which is allowing us to connect to our database, and we have this htaccess file as well, which just contains deny from all. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be modifying this htaccess file to deny from all. And the difference you'll notice here is that if you were to open your browser and go and try and access this adverts folder, you receive an access forbidden error, because then what the user could do is say ads.inc.php, and they'd be able to see the advert on its own, because obviously we're including it in our index file. Okay, so that's a bit about the directory structure. Now let's go on and connect to our database. So I can close this htaccess file now. So we're connecting using the MySQL connect function, and this is going to take 3 parameters, all string data, and that is localhost for the server that we're connecting to, the username, and the password. In my case, the password is blank. I don't have a password for this root account. The second command we're going to be using is MySQL select DB, and that's going to select the database name that we're using. So if you go ahead and open up phpMyAdmin, you'll see that my database name is Advert Rotation, and I have a table in this called Advert. So we're going to be connecting to Advert Rotation, or rather selecting this database. So we can go ahead and type in Advert Rotation. Okay, so that's our db.inc.php file done. Now let's go ahead and look at the actual directory structure, so you can follow along and create your table exactly as I have. So the first field we have needs to be auto increment. So when you click on the insert tab, you need to ensure you check auto increment. Sometimes it's abbreviated to AI, so it may be AI, but ensure that's checked, and that's just going to increment the value so we can keep a unique count on each advert. And that's type integer. By default it's 11, but you can by all means shorten this. The image I've created as a varchar 255 characters. So varchar is a variable character, and that's 255. So that should be enough to store our image directory and then the file. URL, again, varchar 255. You might want to increase this if you're planning to store longer domains, but that should be enough now just to store a domain name. impressions needs to be an integer, clicks needs to be an integer, expires also needs to be an integer, and then shown needs to be an integer. But just to save a bit of space, set it as a length of 1, because we're only ever going to be displaying the value 1 or 0 in there. I've probably got a bit too many for impressions and clicks by 11. However, this is entirely up to you. Okay, so the data that I've inserted, I clicked on insert here, and I just typed out all the relevant data. And you can see this data here. We've got advert ID, which we didn't specify, the system did that for us. And we went across this and spoke about each field in the first part of the tutorial. So by now you should know how this works. However, when you're inserting data, you only really need to specify the image, the URL, and the expiry time. Now, how do we specify a expiry time? Well, let's go ahead and open up our timestamp.php file. You can see that at the moment we've got it set to this, and we only really need to look at the last 3 or 4 characters, or the numbers. So this is 893, or 6893 we'll go for. And you can see that the advert expires 7432. So you can work out for yourselves that this expiry time is greater than the current timestamp. And we're going to be adding this check in our query that's only going to select adverts where the timestamp is, or the current timestamp is less than this expires value here. So hopefully that makes sense. And then shown, obviously by default, you should probably specify that it's 0, although you can just pop a 0 in there when you're adding them from your database. Okay, so now more importantly, let's go over to ads.inc.php and start writing out the code we need to actually display adverts. So the first thing we need to do is include our db.inc.php file, and that's going to allow us to connect to our database because we're obviously selecting and updating in our database. And I'm going to create a query, and I'm going to call it ads. So ads equals MySQL query. This is going to perform a MySQL query for us, and we're going to be selecting advert ID from. Remember, advert ID is the ID of the advert that's stored in our database. In fact, we need to select more than the advert ID. We need to select advert ID and the image. Okay, so essentially, what the image is just the image that's going to be displayed here in the directory. The reason we're not selecting the URL is go.php later on when we program that is going to handle everything for us. So we're selecting advert ID and image, and we're selecting that from the table adverts. Remember, we called our table adverts in PHP or in MySQL essentially. And we need a few conditions here that are going to check, or one condition, no, it's actually, sorry, 2 conditions, and then we're going to order it by a certain amount. And ordering is very important because obviously we want it to start at the top and go down. Okay, so the condition here is where, and we use the Unix timestamp function, and what this does is it returns the current Unix timestamp. So much like we're doing in our timestamp.php file, but this is going to do this in the query for us. So we're selecting everything where the Unix timestamp is less than expires, so less than the value in the expiry field, and shown, let's just pull this over a bit, and where shown is equal to 0, because obviously we only want to select adverts that have not yet been shown. And later on we're going to update this shown field every time the advert's shown. So we're going to order this by the advert ID, and we're going to make it ascending, and then we're going to give it a limit of 1. The reason I'm adding this limit of 1 is just simply so we, for some reason, I know we probably never would, oh, in fact, yeah, we would, yeah. Okay, so yeah, the reason we had this limit 1 is so we only return 1 advert, because we only want to display 1 advert at a time.